The Miami Dolphins are hopeful to find multiple starters from the 2025 NFL Draft. At what spots do they have the best chance to find one on day 3?
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today on the show, we are looking at day 3 fits for Miami, some favorites that I have, and guys that could potentially, I think, capture lightning in a bottle. And if this draft is going to be what a lot of people are going to need it to be for their mental health and well-being in the build-up to the 2025 season, in which a lot of the confidence in the foundation of the team and the direction of the team is justifiably shaken. And I'm putting it lightly, right? But if there's going to be any rousing successes this year for Miami that exceed expectations, you're probably going to need to find a few overachievers and overperformers in the draft this year. And of course, it's a great year to have 10 picks. The Dolphins in a perfect world would double the amount of picks that they're making on day 2. I think that's the ticket for them, really giving themselves to authentically draft for need, but still have enough bites of the apple to address the needs that they have on the roster. And, Chris Grier talked at the beginning of the week and talked about the street free agency outlook is better than it's been in a long time, and that's going to be a part of their plan. And all of that is true and factual. But make no mistake with what the strategy of the team has been this offseason. They are building around their current nucleus of players as the new starting point for the next life cycle of the team. And the way that goes off without a hitch, the way that is a rousing success, is to overperform in the batting average that you bat when making selections in the NFL draft. So I'm going to just kind of work through a whole bunch of names. We're going to put a whole bunch of names on the table. That way, hopefully when Miami drafts one of them, we can point back to this show and say, we called this guy out on day 3 as a day 3 option for Miami. But I'm going to look at every position other than quarterback because your quarterback, you're looking at, it's going to be your 3rd string quarterback going into 2025. You're not going to be drafting a starter at that spot. But everywhere else, I think there's options where it's like, hey, I think this is a really good scheme fit for a guy who, whether it's 116 or 135 or 150 or 155, like maybe you capture lightning in a bottle. I look at the running back position. Dolphins aren't looking for a starter here, but if you had an injury to Devon Achane, or if you had an injury to Jalen Wright and you needed somebody to step in, this is kind of the deepest group of day 3 runners or of day 3 prospects. And a lot of guys that you would feel confident in being a primary snap taker at the position. I think Damien Martinez from the Miami Hurricanes can be had on day 3, early on day 3. And if you told me the Dolphins drafted Damien Martinez, I'd love the fit. I think it'd be a great value add at that point to have another back that you can rely on, but it's probably not going to be too early, right? Like I have a really hard time justifying using pick 48 on a back, but you get into day 3 and it's the kind of window where I can get on board with it. And you're probably pushing Alexander Mattison and competing with him for that spot. And I think a guy like Damien Martinez would outperform him, if we're being honest. I think the same could be said for Devin Neal from Kansas. I like LaQuint Allen from Syracuse quite a bit. I think he's more of like a passing down back with some pass protection upside and some like actually receiving the football upside. But if you told me that with how Miami has passed the ball in years past, if they want to stay on that kind of volume, a player like a LaQuint Allen is kind of when you go 21 with pony personnel, and Achane's kind of moving all around in all the ways that they like to get him in all different spots in the formation, I think LaQuinn Allen could be a viable option for you as well. Jadon Blue from Texas, the skill level is there. He can fly. A lot of parallels between the Texas offense and the Dolphins offense. The challenge there for me is the ball security. Jadon Blue has a ton of ball security issues, and that's the kind of a first-class ticket to not only not playing or as a starter, but being put in the doghouse altogether and not getting opportunities. At wide receiver, day 3 lightning in a bottle type options. I have a hard time not pointing to Xavier Restrepo. Obviously, wide receiver is lower on the list of needs, in my opinion, than a long-term answer at tight end. Another rotational back. Obviously, you have the primary needs that exist at offensive guard and defensive tackle and cornerback. And I know Restrepo didn't run well with whatever he tweaked at his personal workout, but he was well represented at the combine in the actual, like the gauntlet and the field drills. His GPS tracking there was above average. Now, I don't think he's a burner. I don't think he's a 4.5 flat guy. I would have guessed Xavier Restrepo would probably run like a 4.62, but he's dense. He runs good routes. He catches everything. He blocks his rear end off. If you wanted a player who has kind of the shiftiness of a Braxton Berrios, but you want a player that I think is actually like tailor-made to fit within the offense as a denser guy that can actually block and blocks well. Restrepo, if he's there at 135, for example, if you wanted to make that pick, I think he could be when you're in 11 personnel, I think he could compete for some of those opportunities. Now, that obviously might be dependent upon what happens with number 10, because you do have Malik Washington with a year jump on the system. You brought in Nick Westbrook-Ikhine as a big body guy. Restrepo is a slot exclusive player. I would also look for TeSlaa from Arkansas. This cat's a treat, man. If you want another big body guy and you want a guy who's primarily in the slot, which is what TeSlaa is, but a super dynamic player who will play his rear end off on rundowns. That's the nice thing about playing at Arkansas is these guys got really bred and accustomed to playing without the football in their hands. At 6'3" and 5'8", 214 pounds, ran a 4.43 with almost a 40-inch vert, almost an 11-foot broad jump, but then paired that as a 215-pound wide receiver at 6'3.5" with a 3-cone drill of 6.85 seconds, which is it's about 70th percentile. So you have a really freaky athlete who lives in the slot, and I think there's a great insurance there for Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. And, they used him in motion, TeSlaa, a lot, to be in motion at the snap and insert in the run blocks into gaps, to fit on linebackers on the second level, to get all the way across the formation and cut down safeties 20 yards downfield. He's tailor-made for the offense. And by the end of his rookie season, I could see him really taking, these pet projects that they've had, the Tanner Connors of the world. Forget that guy. Give me this guy who's a receiver, plays like a receiver, but blocks like a tight end. Freaky athlete in every capacity. So at a tight end is a name, or a wide receiver, but blurs the lines between a tight end and a wide receiver. I have 2 names at tight end. Well, 3 names at tight end. And I think this is probably the best argument that you can make to not draft a tight end early is I've got 3 different players with 3 different body types and skill sets, all of which I think are legitimate options to carve out an early role as a contributor for the Dolphins. We're going to get into those guys next here on Locked On Dolphins, so make sure you guys stick with us. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now to post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Man, I've been fighting some demons this week on the podcast. Better this week than next. I thought we were through it yesterday, and then I did, an hour and 10 minutes with Travis Wingfield for drive time on top of Locked On NFL Scouting and Locked On Dolphins. So I think I probably bit off a little more than I could chew, and we're back a few squares, but that's okay. We're making do, and we're talking tight ends. Guys that can carve out, maybe not like, hey, you're going to start over Jonnu Smith, but guys that can claim a primary role within one of the subsections of tight end positions, because there's multiple roles in which the tight end is used in this offense. We've mentioned Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech. He's a day 3 staple on all of my mock drafts. He is a mauler as an inline blocker, your traditional Y player. He's the best run, for my money, the best run blocking tight end in the class. He's not a pass catcher. He's a hand in the dirt, move you off your spot, win real estate at the point of attack, but you can send him in motion. He can block in space. Super big, physical, mean, nasty tight end. That dude for me has a very obvious and clear pathway to beat out Julian Hill and also Pharaoh Brown at some point throughout his rookie season to be the team's de facto Y. I think your flex player, your potential heir to Jonnu Smith, if you don't want to sign Jonnu Smith to a contract extension, because he's entering into a contract year, and you don't want to use a first-round pick on Tyler Warren, Jalen Conyers from Texas Tech is the name that I have. Conyers has some parallels with how he's used, as he was a guy at both Arizona State and then he transferred to Texas Tech. He plays as a flex weapon. They put him in the backfield and direct snap him the football. They put him in the slot. They put him in the backfield. They put him at wide receiver. They use him in all of those ways. And the parallel in which the formation adjuster tight end, the F tight end that Miami has been using in their offense, I think Conyers is the day 3 backup plan to have a long-term player at that spot in this draft, if you wanted to invest a pick to get that. Tight end, I also think you do have a player that can successfully blur the lines between the F and the Y, which is an exciting proposition. There's some medical background with this player, which I'm going to pause. If you listen carefully, you can hear the eyes rolling as I say that. Thomas Fidone from Nebraska declared early. He's an early entrant into this class. He bypassed his last bit of eligibility. 6'5", 243 pounds. Oh, he's a little light for a tight end, but he's got over 82.5 wingspan. That's 94th percentile for tight end since 2000. 1.57 10-yard split is 87th percentile. And I know at the end of the day, like it's all about the film, right? But these numbers are quantified on the film, and it helps give you perspective on how this player stacks up versus his peers at the position. So when I tell you he's a really explosive athlete, he's an 87th of every 100 tight ends to come out since 2000. He's better than 86 of them out of every 100 with how explosive he is in the first 10 yards. And you see body control. You see a player who, and he was really highly recruited, had a couple of knee injuries early in his career in Nebraska, kind of got him off the rails. Some of the athletic profile comparisons for his height, weight, speed, explosiveness, agility, all of his athletic testing. Greg Dulcich, UCLA, was a third-round pick. Kyle Pitts, obviously top 5 pick, 75% match there. Austin Hooper, productive NFL player. Luke Musgrave, second-round pick to Green Bay. Elijah Arroyo from Miami this year. Tucker Kraft has developed into an impact starter for the Packers in the same draft class as what Luke Musgrave was. There's a lot of successful names on this list. So for Thomas Fidone, do you get the 150 or 155 if he's sitting there staring you in the face and you want that player that can be an F, but can also be a Y? Well, I think that's maybe a lightning in the bottle type of option for you at that position. But there's risk that's associated because, of course, there is. There's always risk. On the offensive line, there's some really interesting names here. Names that played tackle in college, names that played guard in college, names that played at a Big 12 school, names that played non-FBS football. You have names that played in the Ivy League. You have names that played multiple spots. You have names that were early entrants or 6th-year seniors, 7th-year seniors, Joshua Gray. Like, we got the gambit here. And there's a number of players that I look at on the offensive line and say, hey, if you're willing to double dip, because I think a double dip's appropriate, if you're willing to invest in more players and really have competition and not just be complacent with the names that are in-house because you know what they are and it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. The entire passing offensive structure last year was watered down in large part because they didn't have the unit up front. And it kind of felt like they realized pretty early on, oh, we don't have the unit up front. So we kind of have to put ourselves into a box with how we call games. They've told us they're going to invest draft capital. In a perfect world, I think you get a day 2 pick and a day 3 pick, or you get 2 4s or a 4 and a 5. But the good news is I look at the names that I have graded here. Caleb Rogers from Texas Tech. Both sides of the center, guard, and tackle. Now, he doesn't have the length. He's going to play guard at the next level. He's a great zone system fit. Jalen Travis played at Harvard, transferred to Iowa State. He's got about 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 career snaps. Most of them came this year at Iowa State. A little bit of an underdeveloped and under-rep player for a fifth-year player coming out. He looks the part. I think he moves the part. I think he's got great size. You put him inside, I think he cut down on some of his shortcomings. I think he could compete to start at guard. Joshua Gray, Oregon State, 7th-year senior. Nothing like a 7th-year senior. He's on the Van Wilder plan. Played his entire career at Oregon State up until this year at left tackle. They get a transfer in from Colorado. Was Christian Lichtenhan, just a road grader, like 6'7". They said, okay, that guy's going to be left tackle now. Joshua Gray, you're going to kick inside and play guard. Little green, little rough around the edges, little overreactive with stuff playing inside. But especially when you consider that the threshold to start is you're going to beat out Liam Eichenberg right now, or potentially Larry Borum. I think Joshua Gray. I think Jalen Travis. I think Caleb Rogers. I think Bryce Cabeldue from Kansas, who was the tackle. He's the left tackle. And then they had Logan Brown come in. And so Cabeldue was playing left tackle. It was the right tackle and then moved to left tackle when Logan Brown came. I got Jackson Slater from Sacramento State. He's got some Mason McCormick vibes, small school kid. I got Jalen Rivers from Miami. I think he could be a starter. I don't say this to say don't take a guy on day 2 at offensive line, because either 48 or 98 for me in a perfect world is an offensive lineman, but then I'm also taking one of these guys. Because that gives me, if I have Patrick Paul, if I have James Daniels, if I have Aaron Brewer, I have Austin Jackson, I have a vacant spot. And you got Larry Borum and Lee Meichenberg as depth players, right? And let's classify them as depth players. So I need a starter, and then I probably need 2 more names to roster. I'd probably double dip, and I'd sign a veteran after the draft. Whether that's a Joe Noteboom, whether that's a Will Hernandez, whether that's a Brandon Scherf, whatever that looks like. And if you end up going 4th round pick with Caleb Rogers and a 5th round pick with Jackson Slater, you probably do want to sign Brandon Scherf in case neither one of those guys ends up being ready so that Scherf can be your starter. But I got a lot of names. Late 3rd round, early 4th round. Names that I think can step into this system with the athletic profiles that they have, and they've played tackles, so there's a conversion that's involved, but they're not 295-pound light sand in the pants can't anchor kind of guys. These are 310, 315-pound cats. They're big dudes. But because they play guard and there's a position conversion here, they might be available a little later. We're supposed to get into defensive tackles. In this block, we're not going to fit it. So we're going to put defensive tackles in the next block along with some secondary options that I like on day 3 for the Dolphins. Just giving you guys a lot of names, right? Dolphins have a lot of volume on day 3. We want to be prepped for it as best we can. That's next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with the Fire TV Stick 4K devices with no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to Avowed. As easy as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. You can play high-quality Xbox games for a fraction of the cost of a console. And if you already have a console, Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids or your buddy's game wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Defensive tackles. It depends on what you're looking for. You want a nose tackle, you can find one early on day 3. You can find a starting nose tackle. And I have been indoctrinated by the Church of Alfred Collins for quite some time now. I love Alfred Collins. But as I'm doing the math, and I consider plus value at each spot, and I want to achieve getting better in the trenches, but I want to achieve getting better in the trenches on both sides of the ball, and I really want to double dip with both the offensive and defensive lines. And I have my 1, I have my 2, I have my 3, I have my 2 4s, and I have my 2 5s. I have 7 picks. You could tell me they draft Alfred Collins and I'd be over the moon. I'd be super excited. But you could also tell me that the Dolphins draft Jonah Savinaya, the offensive lineman, at 48. And then they draft defensive tackles at 98 and 116. And then they draft another offensive lineman at 135. Man, I think that's the ticket. I really do. But that means no Alfred Collins at 48. And he might not even get to 48, in which case, you know, what can I do? Besides just crying to a pillow at night. But if you want a nose tackle, knowing that that's a 400 snap role in an offense and a defense, maybe less, maybe a little bit more. Let's say between 350 and 500 snaps. I think Jamaree Caldwell from Oregon is a viable name. I think he's an upgrade over Benito Jones. I think Jordan Phillips from Maryland is a player who is super young, but capable. Not necessarily a nose, but if you want an odd front end who's not like super pass rush profile, disruption profile, but controls gaps and plays hard and eats space, and then you get into passing down situations and you're going to see those reps to your third edge between Phillips, Chubb, and Chop Robinson. You have Ty Robinson from Nebraska who might be there. You have Vernon Broughton, the other Texas defensive tackle. If you want to, you could even go deeper in the nose tackle pool, and I could give you Jay Toya from UCLA, and potentially he's a 5th-round guy, and Nazir Stackhouse from Georgia. As I would say, he's probably like the defensive tackle equivalent to Thomas Fidone or from Jalen Conyers to Tyler Warren at tight end, as like you have a 1st round, like a deluxe version of this. And then you have the bare bones version of it that you can get a lot of the same stuff with. Alfred Collins, I think is the deluxe. Alfred Collins is the deluxe model. But then you can get to Nazir Stackhouse and Vernon Broughton on rounds 4 and 5. And those guys can be, I think those guys can be 400, 500 snap guys. Now, Stackhouse is more of a true nose. Broughton, I think he gives you a little bit more versatility with where you line them up. But I want the spirit of the comment to be the spirit of the comment. I don't have to draft a guy at 13 that's going to give me 500 snaps at defensive tackle that I feel like can keep his head above water. Not in this class. No way. It's a deep group. And it's not just lumps on logs and bogs in the bottom of the lake, right? Jay Toya from UCLA, he blew me away when I watched him. CJ West from Indiana, I'd put in the same boat. I'm not going to mention Deion Walker from Kentucky. I had somebody busting my chops. Yes, was it Dave? Somebody busted my chops yesterday. Hey, you gave us a list of 5 for the Charles Harris Memorial. You didn't give us a name that you're like ready to jump off the roof for. It's probably Deion Walker. I think a ton of empty calorie reps for me. I didn't mention JJ Pegues from Mississippi as well. Is a guy who they did direct snap stuff with at Ole Miss. He had like 7 rushing touchdowns last year. Now, I think there's some more inconsistency with him. I don't feel as good as of him being, hey, we're drafting you in round 4, round 5, and you're going to take 500 snaps, and we're going to feel really good about it. Because it's not just that he's a role-specific kind of player. I think there's some inconsistencies with the point of attack. But, man, you like the athletic profile for a guy that big. And anybody that they can give the football to do a whole bunch of quirky stuff, you can bet your bottom dollar Mike McDaniel's probably going to love him. So you get a lot of options at defensive tackle. And, that was kind of the spirit of when we looked at the big board. And I'm not putting the big board up today because somebody yelled at me yesterday that the big board was too hard to read when the big board was only up as a visual aid. If you want to read the big board, you can go to Touchdown Miami and download the darn thing. I'm just kidding. But as I look at the grades distribution here, round 3, round 4, round 5, I got a ton of options here. And that can be a deterrent for me unless I have a too good to be true player who's sitting there staring me in the board with a top 13 pick. There's a world where Kenneth Grant is the best player available, in which case, yeah, I'd probably just take him. And then I probably don't have to worry about a double depth because that's a guy I'm probably banking on playing 600-700 snaps. And he did that this past year at Michigan for concerns about the conditioning. In the secondary, and I keep tacking on some extra corners. And the extra corners that I've ended up watching, I've ended up liking more. I'm up over 30 corners now, 32 to be exact. Obviously, you have the top tier. There's a kind of a sweet spot at 48 where you could get some options. You get to day 3, and it's guys that are very scheme and stylistic specific or guys that are super raw, right? And I wouldn't feel super comfortable getting a starter. But there's some developmental starters that I like, including a name that the Dolphins reportedly had in for a visit, and that's Corey Black from Oklahoma State. 4.35 at the Big 12 Pro Day, so he can run. Get 12 passes defense this year. Can play in the face of guys, can play a little bit of press, has some good transitional quickness. He's like 6 foot 195, good build. Didn't get a chance too often to get involved in the run fits at Oklahoma State, so it's a little bit of an incomplete portion of his profile. And I certainly wouldn't draft him. I gave him he's got a 5th round grade for me. I wouldn't draft him and say, hey, he's going to be your starter. And that's why when I look at corner, I really feel like I probably need to get a corner at either 13 or at 48 if I'm going to get a starter. That's about where the well runs dry for me at corner. But that's why we did this exercise, to look at some of these other spots to say, hey, I can draft this guy to get me 400 snaps this year at tight end or running back or offensive guard, or potentially be a 1,000 snap guy at guard or defensive tackle as a part of the rotation. I feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable at corner. Now, Corey Black's like an intriguing developmental name. Zoff Frazier from UTSA, I'd put in the same bucket. Really, though, I think the more interesting players are the hybrid players that can play some safety. And I'm running out of time here on the show, so I'm just going to give you the names, the quick and dirty of it. Marquise Siegel from Kansas State, plus athlete, former corner, plays safety. Can play in the nickel, can play up high, can fit the run, tackles. I have a 4th round grade on him. If you don't want to go the safety route early because you think you are going to get a diverse corner that can kind of do some safety stuff for you as an outside corner, can also play inside, Jahdae Barron, if you're going to go that route. And you don't want to, if Iafitu Melifonwu is a piece of your puzzle and you like Ashton Davis probably more than you should, and you feel comfortable there, I think Siegel is an option at 136 or 150. I'd put Caleb Ransaw in that same bucket from Tulane. Corner, projecting as a safety, a hybrid player, hybrid safety corner mix. I'd put J.J. Roberts from Marshall, more of a high post player. Dude flies around, hair on fire kind of guy. Dolphins had him in for a visit. Former corner at Wake Forest. Now plays safety for the last 2 years. Can play in the nickel. Can play up high. Played outside at Wake. These are guys that I think give you enough variety because, again, kind of like with the offensive line discussion, there's some change, so some variation. And I would also put R.J. Mickens out there. If you were going to go for like a Deshaun Elliott type of player, I think R.J. Mickens from Clemson can be that for this team as well. So I got a lot of names at safety I like. The hybrids, the nickel guys, a third safety, defensive tackle, offensive guard, tight end. We got names. Plan accordingly when you're doing your final mock drafts. We're going to do that next week. Keep it locked in. Right here on Locked On Dolphins, it is your team every day. Appreciate you guys as well for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend. I'm going to try to get my voice back for Monday. Hope to see you then.